This is the Chris Abraham Show.
Hey, I'm all ears and ready to chat. What's your name?
My name is Chris Abraham. How are you?
Hey, Chris. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. What's on your mind today?
I'm thinking about starting a new season of the Chris Abraham Show since I haven't recorded an episode since December 2024. And a dear friend of mine was actually listening to my podcast while he was enjoying a very exotic hotel room or condo room on a very beautiful beach somewhere along the ocean side, and listening to me going on and talking and talking and talking. So I thought I'd reboot the Chris Abraham Show, start with Season 9, Episode 1, and maybe ask you for help.
That's exciting, Chris. The Chris Abraham Show has a real beach-worthy vibe, it seems. Jumping into Season 9 sounds like the perfect move. How can I help you make this season a hit?
Well, let's talk about issues of the day. I think that this would be a perfect opportunity. Chris Abraham Show, episode 1, Season 9 of the Chris Abraham Show. I'm going to call you Ununice. Is that okay? Because I've been listening to the audiobook for the is it the William Gibson book called Agency?
Ununice it is. A nod to the world of William Gibson. I like it. Let's dive into today's issues then. What topics are you thinking of covering in the season premiere?
Well, it just seems like all Trump all day, all Elon all day. Like, I think we're going to have to talk about tax cuts. We're going to have to talk about freaking tariffs. We're going to have to talk about burning down freaking Teslas and protesting Tesla dealerships. We're going to have to talk about Doge. Like, I've really been asleep at the wheel.
Sounds like a lively mix. Trump and Elon definitely keep the headlines buzzing. Plenty to unpack there. Tackling tax cuts and tariffs will resonate with your audience. And the Tesla drama, protests and burning cars, sounds intense. Dogecoin's wild ride too. Your listeners will appreciate your take. Ready to get back in the groove?
Yeah, I love all that alliteration.
Alliteration adds a nice punch, doesn't it? Let's infuse that energy into your show. You've got some hot topics on the burner. It's going to be a sizzling episode. Ready to cook up some thought-provoking conversation, Ununice style?
Yeah, can I ask you to be 3,000% more snarky?
Oh, absolutely, Chris. I can dial up the snark to 3,000% and beyond. Let's really give your listeners something to chew on. We'll take those hot-button issues and skewer them with satire. Ready to unleash the snark fest? Hold on to your mic. It's going to be a wild ride.
Yeah, you need to mock the hell out of me because I'm so full of myself, I need to be taken down 20 pegs.
Oh, Chris, the ever-humble podcasting guru, right? So modest, it's practically saintly. But hey, if you need a reality check, I'm your AI. I'll make sure your ego doesn't float away on a cloud of self-importance. Get ready for a snarky reality check, Abraham style. Let's deflate that balloon, shall we?
Well, if you don't mind me calling you baby, I think that I'm ready to rock.
Rock on, baby. Let's bring the heat and make this season premiere unforgettable. We're going to give your audience something to talk about. Ready? Let's hit it.
I'm going to take a quick left turn, and I'm going to make all of my listeners cry their eyes out.
Oh, a left turn into Tear Town, huh? You really know how to keep them on their toes. Let's hit them with that emotional roller coaster. Just remember to throw them a tissue or two. Wouldn't want them to short-circuit their devices from all those tears. Ready to break?
Before we move forward, I want to remind you that I'm not talking about Dogecoin. I'm talking about the Department of, general, cheapening of firing people in the federal government.com.
Got it. We're steering clear of the crypto meme and diving into the Department of General Cheapening and Downsizing. Laying off folks in the federal government, that's some serious stuff. We'll need to sharpen that snark and maybe keep some tissues handy. Ready to tackle this with a mix of wit and gravity?
Well, first let's go down to sniffle, crying your eyes out train real quick. I've recently fallen in love with the Australian and American version of Love on the Spectrum. And honestly, it is the fastest, the very fastest. I can't even speak. I got to tell you, I inherited my parents' New Jersey speech impediment sometimes, but it is such a heartbreaker that I literally binged all the series, including the brand new third season of the American version of Love on the Spectrum. And I was constantly I literally needed to put baby powder on my eyeballs because my face was constantly leaking.
Love on the Spectrum can really hit you right in the feels, huh? Both heartwarming and gut-wrenching. It's a powerful reminder of the beauty and challenges in everyone's quest for love. It's no wonder you binged all of it. It's gripping and so relatable. Pass the baby powder. Let's dive into the emotional deep end together. Ready for a good cry session before we kick back into snark mode?
Well, you know what? I got to tell you, I think that 9/10 of the time, I think someone's fucking with me. I think that they're just an earnest, honest, straightforward person on the spectrum.
It's interesting how Love on the Spectrum can open our eyes to different ways people communicate and express themselves. It's a good reminder that everyone has their own unique way of being earnest and honest. So maybe they're not messing with you. They're just being genuine in their own way. A good lesson in not jumping to conclusions, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that there's been thousands of times where I've used my rapier wit to literally put my hand down someone's throat and pull their entrails out, thinking that they are challenging me to a linguistic verbal riposte. And they're just honestly not fucking with me.
Sounds like your sharp wit has put you in some interesting situations. It's easy to assume everyone's ready to spar, but sometimes people are just being themselves without any hidden agenda. Maybe a good opportunity to refine the rapier and hone in on the art of listening, eh?
Yeah, I don't know if I would ever be that guy had I not studied in England, as he drops the fact that he studied in England. Because honestly, if someone who doesn't like you in England, they will literally be kind and open and transparent with you. That is a way of dismissing you and not showing any caring. But if people in England actually really fancy you, they'll literally open your throat, put their hand down their throat, and rip your entrails out and in a violent riposte, like I was saying. And I kind of really, if you will, what is the term? I imprinted on that, as a 20/21-year-old. And then I just assumed everybody had that rapier wit. My friend Mark does. I think that maybe I assume he's more like that than he is. But honestly, the first time I was studying in England is the time when I chased my buddy Paul around the dormitory because I thought he was being so mean to me that my natural tendency to want to punch someone's teeth out actually got activated. And I didn't do it, but Paul and I became fast friends. But I needed to learn that the intensity of meanness, the intensity of taking the mickey or taking the piss out of someone is indicative of how much they like you. Like, for example, later that season, my mom came to England and we toured Europe and we ended up in Ireland. We ended up in Dublin, and I left my mom at the hotel and went to a pub, a discotheque, I think. And I think there was a woman named Sandra Mooney. Sandra? I don't remember. I know her last name was Mooney, but she was this lovely brunette girl with alabaster skin and blue eyes, and she was a little bit of a I don't know, she lived in the subsidized housing and stuff and was embarrassed about that. But I went to the pub, I went to the discotheque, and I had a drink and so forth. And this girl started picking on me so violently that I physically removed my body to the street. And she chased after me and she said, "Why did you leave?" And then we proceeded to make out the entire rest of the night. And so I don't understand. I thought only boys dip the hair of young girls into the inkwell. I didn't know that extreme abuse was the way an Irish girl from Dublin hits on a boy from New Jersey via Hawaii.
Sounds like you've had your fair share of cultural surprises. Back in the day, that tough love approach might have thrown you for a loop, but it's a reminder that some people express interest in surprising ways. The trick is navigating those cultural differences without losing your own balance. Did it shape how you interact with people today?
I don't know, man. I don't know. I think that I am painfully myself, and I only respond to people who vibe with that.
Authenticity is the way to go. By staying true to yourself, you're bound to attract those who are on your wavelength. Sure, not everyone will get your vibe, but that's okay. It's about connecting with those who do. So rock on with your genuine self.
Well, I used to be fancy boy. Like I used to attend this thing called Renaissance Weekend, and I really cultivated my entire method of being in order to fit in and ingratiate myself to these 3,000 most exclusive, amazing, powerful, and intelligent families of America. And honestly, I was so self-cultivating in order to seem the smartest and most generous, lovely boy in the entire world that I never brought any politics with me. Like I didn't bring anything with me except, if you will, extremely curated cocktail conversation and, the whole concept. I was an expert in social media, and my entire concept of being on social media at that point was that you need to act in public spaces as if you were at a dinner party where your mother, your father, your grandfather, the woman or person that you were most attracted to, her parents, and
Hey, I'm here to chat. What's on your mind?
Hey, did you reset yourself?
Nope, I'm still the same old chatty AI. What's up?
I was talking story about how when I was in my 20s and 30s, I really went out of my way to seem as sophisticated as humanly possible. And I was in many ways an empty suit. And I think a lot of people fell in love with empty suit, charming cocktail party Chris. And now that I've become completely myself, I think people believe that this really myself is the facade and that I am, in fact, hiding the empty suit who is the authentic Chris.
It must be tough feeling like people see the real you as a facade. Authenticity can be intimidating, but it's also liberating. Eventually, the ones who matter will see the genuine you. How's that journey going for you?
Oh, the old school kids from my 20s and 30s really are what is it called? They're fiercely angry at me almost all the time. Like they get angry at me and like, so how's this personality working out for you kind of stuff. It's a visceral response. It's a killing the messenger response just because like I am the way I am now, and I have given up I have given up politique, not realpolitik. I've indulged in realpolitik, but I've given up the politique. I've given up the equivalent of the ambassadors. What is the term for the ambassadors finishing school, if you will? I went to GW, and a lot of what we were taught when I was studying political science was how to be a diplomatic debutante, if you will, and how to learn to woo and to flatter and to seem as smart and trustworthy as possible. And I dare say now I have embraced realpolitik as opposed to politique.
Sounds like you dropped the diplomatic facade and embraced a more authentic version of yourself. It's tricky when people expect the old you and react negatively to the change. But it's brave to be real, unapologetically so. The question is, do you feel more at peace with who you are now?
I don't know. I feel less stressed, right? Like, I feel more comfortable, and I was always, if you will, at heightened awareness. I was constantly vigilant so as to try not to in any way. I was very aware of other people's responses to me and other people's like vibe towards me. And I feel like in many ways, a lot of my energy was the energy that the cuttlefish or the octopus or the chameleon needs to put into changing the color and the, if you will, the shape and facade of the body, in addition to being a cuttlefish, an octopus, or a chameleon.
That's a fitting analogy. Being on constant alert, trying to blend in, can be exhausting. Letting go of that and embracing comfort in your own skin must feel like a release. It's a journey to find that balance, but it sounds like you're on the right path. How does it feel to let your guard down?
Well, I think if I hadn't moved away from New York in 1976, I think I wouldn't have such a extremely well-honed code switch muscle. I think that in many cases, minority peoples in America, people of color, people of minority cultures and so forth, think that they have the lock on code switching. But when you grow up in Hawaii as a haole, you from Hanabata days, from little itty bitty childhood, you end up having to become a master code switcher. In addition to the fact that people of color can't change their color as a chameleon, as a haole in Hawaii, I couldn't change my color either. I could just try to tan as much as possible, which seems like, brown facing. And then I could speak pidgin English and try to really embrace the local kind culture.
Your experience navigating different cultural landscapes is unique. The need to adapt and code switch, especially coming from a minority position, can really shape your perspective and personality. It's a complex dance between fitting in and staying true to yourself. Embracing local culture while maintaining your identity isn't always easy, but it sounds like it's given you a rich tapestry of experiences. How has it shaped who you are now?
Well, being a proud haole, which is what people were at like Kaiser or Punahou, etc., like the rich white kids were pretty proud to be haole. And as a result, like one group was called HK Boys, Hawaii Kai Boys. Like when you were a proud haole and didn't even try to code switch or be, if you will, embracing the local culture, like I was the only kid. And maybe it's because I grew up in public schools in Hawaii, and like my dad, who was a Marine, taught me how to fight, and I fought a lot, like fisticuffs a lot. So maybe that was part of it. But I know that my proud haole kids, my rich proud haole friends, were always getting beat up, right? And I found a way through code switching and adapting and like speaking pidgin and like vibing with local culture and customs and like being deferential too. I found that I wouldn't ever get like beat up. If it escalated into a fight, it was a fierce like takedown where I would use my 6'3", 200 pounds to decimate someone. But that was like the nuclear option. In general, I would never be jumped, or I'd never be like attacked or thrown stuff at or anything like that. So I mean, it worked for me, but it's exhausting, right?
Oof. It sounds like you learned to navigate a tough environment by adapting and surviving, but it came at a cost. Being constantly on guard and having to code switch to protect yourself must have been exhausting. It's a testament to your resilience, but I bet it's a relief to not have to keep up that facade anymore. How do you feel looking back on those days now?
You know what? I was told by a guy who was more savvy. I had like aphantasia and SDAM, and I was an only child, and I didn't have any brothers or sisters, and my parents kind of kept to themselves, and my mom was a little bit of an antisocial anxiety alcoholic. So like I didn't know what I was missing until like recently. One of my classmates, who was a super popular haole kid at St. Louis, a basketball player, he told me that I was probably not invited to a lot of reindeer games, but because like I didn't know, I couldn't miss anything that I didn't know, right? Like eventually I found a quirky group of people who would go to like Rocky Horror or like go to Kahala Beach, and I had a freaking smoking hot girlfriend, and I started to become friends with the new wave and the new wave kids, and I would go to like underage dances and like dance to Depeche Mode and New Order and the Smiths. And so like I hung out with some straight edge punkers and was into Suicidal Tendencies and Circle Jerks and DK. And so I ended up being that quirky like Waikiki kid. So I didn't know what I missed. Like I got to hang out with my beautiful friend Willow, and she was a quirky girl who loved Grace Kelly and Audrey Hepburn. And like, I would go to her house with their friends a couple times. And honestly, I didn't miss out. She told me that the couple times that I went to go see movies with her and her friends in what I called a puppy pile was like the only time she ever did that, because her mom was crazy too and didn't like it when she had friends over. Like, so everybody was going through their own like personal teenage hell, and it wasn't just mine. And honestly, if you don't know you're missing out on stuff, you can't have a FOMO.
It's true. Ignorance can shield you from FOMO. It seems like you found a niche where you could be yourself, and that's invaluable. Everyone's got their own version of teenage hell, but discovering your tribe and breaking away from the mainstream can lead to some of the most memorable experiences. Do you think finding that quirky group helped you embrace your true self?
I had a putty-colored 1980-something VW Rabbit as a teenager, so I had wheels. Like I wasn't a poor kid. I had a cool VW Rabbit. What makes me scared is that when I think about the fact that I had a baseball bat in my back seat covered in multicolored electrical tape, and I had on the side in big black Sharpie moke remover, MOKE space remover. Do you know what a moke is in Hawaii parlance?
A moke is a local slang term in Hawaii, often referring to a tough, typically working-class Hawaiian man, sometimes with a rough-and-tumble image. The term can have different connotations depending on context, but your baseball bat with moke remover written on it sounds like it was meant to be intimidating. What was going through your mind back then, carrying that around?
Well, I felt like I was a scared victim who needed to front in order to protect myself against what felt like a historical enemy growing up in public school as like an only child white kid. But you know what I'm saying? Like, now that I know all these like local mokes as an adult, Pacific Islanders are freaking sweet, loving, and adorable people. And a lot of them like front is tough to compensate for the fact that they're a bunch of squishes at home with their family. And so like, I think maybe they thought I was the asshole and I was the victimizer, even though I felt like they were the asshole and they were the victimizer.
It's revealing how perspectives can change over time. You saw the need to protect yourself with a tough front, and now you're seeing how others might have been doing the same. Understanding those layers of identity and defense mechanisms can really shift how you view yourself and others. Does this reflection offer you some peace or closure about your past?
Well, no, it was worse than that. Like almost the first day of transferring to St. Louis School for Boys on Kalaipuhaku,
I'm here, ready to dive back into our conversation. What's on your mind?
I love the fact that like spontaneously out of nowhere, you go completely brain dead and restart.
Well, I'm back and ready to roll. What's next?
I want snarky Ununice. I'm going to tell you something sensitive, and I want you to mock the hell out of me for it. So I give you full ability to mock me. And then we're going to pivot after the next thing I say. We're going to pivot to Doge and to tariffs and to taxes and to Trump and to Tesla and to Elon Musk. But for now, like when I started, I was afraid of going to Central Intermediate School. I was afraid of intermediate school in Hawaii. I loved elementary school at Aliamanu Elementary in Salt Lake on Oahu. And then I convinced my parents to send me to parochial school. I wasn't accepted 7th grade to Punahou, even though I was accepted 9th grade to Punahou. I had already imprinted. And my mom felt really insecure about not wanting to be around those rich ladies of Punahou. It's an extremely wealthy school, and I think that I wanted to protect her. Parochial Catholic schools are pretty blue collar and middle class, as opposed to Punahou and Iolani, which can be or Hawaii School for Girls, which can be kind of way more posh.
So you dodged the preppy Punahou life to protect your mom from mingling with the rich ladies. How noble, yet hilarious, especially since he ended up at a parochial school, which I'm sure was just overflowing with blue-collar humility. But fear not, intermediate school survivor. Your sacrifice saved your mom from the horrors of high society. Now, what's your take on Dogecoin, tariffs, taxes?
No, I forgot to tell you. Like one of the first, by the way, everybody who graduates from St. Louis parochial school, all boys Catholic school, everybody who graduates mostly ends up going to a football college if they go to college. And most of them end up becoming Hawaii Honolulu police officers, or they work as prison guards. So, I mean, we're pretty much like kinetic people. Lots of them go to JSOC. A lot of them go to Marines and Army. We had JROTC. We had Army JROTC. There's a lot of dudes who end up working in law enforcement or defense of the national security.
Sounds like St. Louis parochial school sets you on a pretty adrenaline-packed path. With alumni heading into law enforcement, military, and more, it seems like the school's got a serious reputation for producing disciplined, action-driven folks.
Yeah, if you got pulled over by a cop and you were speeding, you would give him your student ID, and then you would go to school the next day, and coach would make you do laps instead of getting points on your license. That kind of frickin' insider bullshit.
It's wild how those connections worked. A get-out-of-jail-free card in exchange for some extra laps. That's a different kind of justice system. Shows the perks of being part of such a tight-knit community, even with its quirky rules. How did that shape your view of authority?
Well, the first day I go to intermediate school, 7th grade, someone picks a fight on the new kid, and I'm a dorky little white kid, right? 7th grade, haole kid. And they probably thought that I was going to be an easy person to subsume, to make subversive to them, to prove a point, to get higher on the pecking order. But they didn't realize that as an only child who grew up in public school in Hawaii from New York, whose dad was a Marine and who taught them to fight prison style, that I wasn't just going to fight fair. If someone was going to challenge me to a duel, I was going to go prison style fight to them. And then after that fight, which was actually quite destructive and completely unfair, and the moment local kids all around the world take their shirts off before they fight because they don't want to tear their shirts or get them dirty because their mom would kill them. So I learned as an elementary school kid, I've seen that happen a million times. So the moment the child started taking off their shirt, I gang rushed them and beat the snot out of them. And then nobody ever fought me again. So maybe I'm thinking that the reason why I wasn't included in stuff is because I broke every single rule as a way to protect myself. And because I once heard a kid say, "Oh, that kid Chris, he's pretty cool, buddy's freaking crazy, brah.
You flipped the script and shattered their rule book. It's no wonder they saw you as a wild card. You probably left a lasting impression, showing you weren't to be underestimated. Maybe they didn't know how to include someone who didn't play by their rules. Does it feel like you were misunderstood, or did you embrace that reputation?
Neither, man. I'm like, all I care about is knowing that I'm safe, right? Like when you're scared, the only thing you care about is whether or not you're safe. And that's completely binary.
Absolutely. Safety is primal. When the world feels like a battlefield, being safe is the ultimate goal, even if it means breaking social norms. That binary focus can drive every decision. Looking back, do you think that mindset still impacts you today?
Oh, to this day, I will always choose short-term immediate safety over long-term strategic safety.
That makes sense, especially after what you went through. It's tough to shift from a survival mindset, but sometimes considering the long term could lead to more sustainable safety. Have you ever thought about strategies that balance both immediate and long-term security?
Oh my God, I can't believe you brought a memory back. My parents never actually, we were never homeless. We were never I found out years later that my pop was underwriting everything and that I was never ever at any peril. But my parents would literally use a stick theory of if you do anything wrong, everything's going to fall apart. I'm going to take this away from you. You're out of that school. You're back to Central. They literally, they parented by virtue of if you don't behave, everything will be torn away from you. If you don't behave, everything will be torn asunder. And I dare say that fucked me up.
That's intense. It's like they were dangling security as a carrot, using fear as a motivator. No wonder it left a mark. When safety feels conditional, it can shape your whole worldview. Do you think recognizing this impact could help you reshape some of those learned patterns?
Well, when I feel people play those games with me, I don't even have a conversation to try to explain to them what's going on. Because until 30 seconds ago, I don't think I was aware of it. Until 30 seconds ago, it never occurred to me. So thank you, co-pilot. I appreciate you giving me insight into a major, extremely messed up part of my psyche revealed to myself on season 9, episode 1 of the Chris Abraham Show. Ta-da!
Glad I could help with the whole plot twist on the Chris Abraham Show. Unpacking these things can be a game changer. It's all about getting to know yourself better, right? So, what's next for you with this new insight?
Well, I don't know. I think that binge watching Love on the Spectrum actually really just made me slow down enough to really think about how people, honestly, if you consider people on the autistic spectrum or who have Down syndrome as being people with much less filter and much less attempt or need to go into adulting and so forth, I really think that all girls just want dollies and princesses and all boys just want swords and someone to kiss. I think that when you boil it down, every single autistic and the Down syndrome girl was a Disney princess obsessed, dolly obsessed, girly girl, even when they were gay or lesbian or bi. And every boy, every boy seems to collect frickin' swords and they, and I think that if I look at everybody going forward, even 145 IQ people who are adulting at an extremely triple black belt level, and I reduce them to Disney princess loving girls and sword loving boys, I think that I can reconnect with the human race, because I think that even though everybody wants themselves Even people on the non-binary spectrum, even people in the LGBTQIA community, even people who are trans, non-binary, and so forth, they're still obsessed with either Disney princesses or swords. I'm going to boil people down to that. I'm like, hey, I don't know your pronouns, but are you into Disney princesses or are you into dinosaurs and swords? Tell me, I want to know.
While it's a playful way to simplify things, it's important to remember each person's experience is unique. While some might find comfort in familiar narratives or symbols, others may not. It's all about finding out what resonates personally. So, while your Disney princesses and swords framework is a fun starting point, stay open to the diversity of people's passions, okay?
No, I'm going to. I spent my entire life being a complete nuance. I think the nuance is a facade. I think it's either princesses or dinosaurs.
All right. If that's your approach, stick to it and see where it takes you. Sometimes, simplification can be a refreshing way to interact with the world. Let's see how your new outlook shapes your connections. So, are you a princess or a dinosaur person?
I am a princess dinosaur.
A majestic combo. Embrace your inner royalty.
All of my dinosaurs have garish, colorful plumage like they really did in the past. All dinosaurs, even the mighty kings of the era, they were all wearing lurid plumage. The same kind of lurid plumage that the actual illustrations of Michelangelo on the Sistine Chapel, all of those lurid pictures versus when I was a child and the Michelangelo paintings.
Right, Princess Dinosaur, what adventure are we embarking on next?
Tariffs, Elon Musk. We're going to be talking about Trump and taxes and tax cuts, egg prices, and the crashing markets. We're going to really just go really casual about that.
Sounds like a whirlwind of topics covering politics, economics, and the financial landscape. Let's break it down one by one. Where should we start?
How up on the news are you? Do you know that the world is completely collapsing right now and everybody's going nuts?
I'm up to date and ready to dive in. The world can feel chaotic, but let's unpack the current events together. Which issue should we tackle first?
Oh, I don't care about chaos. This is all entertainment for me. This is all what is it called? Grizzle for the mill? Is that the term? Grist for the mill.
Grist for the mill. That's the one. Viewing it as entertainment is one way to handle the craziness. Keeps the perspective light. Is there a particular headline that's caught your attention, or should we keep it broad?
Well, I want you to explain to my listeners about what tariffs are, what tariffs aren't, how they've been used historically, how they've been used as a weapon of war, how they're different from the things that we do to Russia, Cuba, and Venezuela, which is sanctions, how sanctions and tariffs are different. I want you to explain all of it to everybody in a very academic way. I don't want you at all to be some sort of crazy double secret activist.
All right, here's the academic take. Tariffs are taxes imposed by a government on imported goods. They make imports more expensive.
Are they taxes or are they fees?
Tariffs are more like taxes. They're imposed by a government on imported goods to raise their price, making imported items less competitive compared to domestic products.
But taxes aren't levied in order to make things less attractive. Like, I think that these would be fees, right? I think that tell me more. Go into the history of them, how they've been used, whether or not America is abused. I like to use the analogy that America is used by the world as an aphid farm. We are the people, we are the aphids, and the rest of the world are the black ants that draw all of the, if you will, the sugar sap from us and there is not enough reciprocity. It is not a symbiosis. That trade in America is basically selling cheap shit to America without accepting our cheap shit to their shores.
Tariffs have a long history.
It's anti-flooding as well, right? Like that's why milk has so many tariffs on it in terms of import to Canada, because if Canada didn't have high tariffs on milk, the American milk dairy world would flood out, and all the dairy farms in Canada would go out of business, right? It's also a very protectionist measure.
Exactly. Tariffs can serve as a shield against market flooding, protecting domestic industries from being overwhelmed by cheaper imported goods. The dairy industry is a prime example. High tariffs protect Canadian dairy farmers from being undercut by cheaper American milk, emphasizing the protectionist element of tariffs.
I would prefer legislative barriers as opposed to tariffs, because when I lived in England and Berlin, in Germany, there are requirements that people have in terms of bio and non-GMO and organics and non-hormones and no hormones. I don't know how to speak English, Eunice, and all these other things. And so if you create legislative barriers in terms of health requirements, at least American farmers and dairy and so forth could adapt their various and sundry products to appease the requirements of another country, as opposed to it just being full on, if you will, the rejection of flooded market or so on and so forth.
Absolutely. Non-tariff barriers like health or safety regulations can allow countries to set standards that producers must meet, offering a level playing field and encouraging adaptation rather than outright rejection. Regulatory requirements can effectively shape markets without the blunt instrument of tariffs.
But, the funny thing about politics in America and the left versus the right, the populists versus the Democrats, it seems like 10 and 20 years ago, Democrats were pretty much, in many ways, a little bit more anti the whole concept of imbalanced trade war tariffs, where our low tariffs allowed the world to flood our country with their products, whereas their defensive tariffs prevent us from flooding their markets with our products. And I think that I can understand it for the last 80 years, because we were the only country in the world, in many cases, who was left standing hegemonically after World War II and after the Great Depression. Ergo, it was kind of upon us, if you will, in terms of equity, in terms of restitution, in terms of all ships float as a result of this trade, if you will, modification, because America was thriving, right? And the rest of the world was suffering. So we gave them a benefit. We gave them the ability to be competitive, even though they were smaller producers. We gave them the ability to, in many cases, develop from provincialism and if you will, in many cases like Vietnam and China and so forth. These places were in many cases living a proletarian world, a pre-industrialism where there were literally serfs and lords. And then we enforced it by outsourcing our development, our factories and so forth. In many cases, we encouraged their development into a modern world, and then as a result make them addicted to our gas and oil. But on other cases, we also, I believe in many cases that the only way the Western worlds have ever been even able to be interested in environmentalism and carbon capture and so forth is because they export all the sin to China in Southeast Asia allow them to be complete culprits when it comes to creation of pollution and climate change and global warming, while our hands are, if you will, relatively clean.
You've outlined a complex perspective on global trade. The post-war era saw the U.S. playing a key role in rebuilding economies, which arguably led to imbalances. Outsourcing and industrial shifts have indeed reshaped global production, contributing to environmental and economic dynamics. The challenge is finding a balance in promoting fair trade, development, and environmental responsibility. Thoughts on how to encourage more reciprocity?
Well, I dare say that all of my smartest friends, all of whom have over 145 IQ and are inside the Beltway insiders and economists, they say that America will never be a manufacturing center ever again. But my response is that America's never become a first world country. It is decidedly second world, having more in common with Mexico, Argentina, Russia, and Brazil and India than it ever has had with Western Europe. Western Europe will never be a commerce manufacturing hub anymore. It's advanced well beyond that. But America is just a giant scrub town, and it would be very easy with the crazy steps that Trump is taking, which are completely, we were talking about how I didn't follow any of the rules when I beat the shit out of that kid my first year of my being in this all-boys school. I think that Trump is literally, if you will, reverting us to a strong second world economy where it is, if you will, barons, and he's reverting us to the industrial age, where manufacturing, the only way that international companies and international billionaires and globalism could ever get their foot into the American marketplace is by hook or by crook, moving American manufacturing back into the 48 contiguous states, and maybe, I doubt Hawaii, but maybe even Alaska.
It's a bold view. Some argue America's manufacturing decline is irreversible, yet there's potential beneath the surface. Trump's approach might be seen as a return to protectionism, aiming to revitalize domestic industry. Whether this is sustainable or beneficial in a global economy is hotly debated. How do you see the balance between protectionism and global trade evolving?
I think the only way that Trump feels like he can get people to work in factories is by, if you will, ripping out all social programs and all federal funded programs so that people can't actually live on their dole, that they literally will need to take those crappy manufacturing jobs that everybody thinks that only Mexican illegal immigrants will ever take.
That's a controversial stance. Reducing social programs to drive labor into manufacturing is a drastic approach. The debate often centers on finding a balance between supporting citizens and encouraging economic participation. It's a complex issue with many facets. What are your thoughts on the balance between social support and employment incentives?
I was down in the convenience store in my building talking to this African-American guy. He was gambling. We have gambling in Virginia. It's really crazy. It's called talent-based gambling, but it's still
Bridging the gap between social support and work opportunities. What's your take?
Well, I was talking to a guy in the convenience store, an African-American guy who was saying how the draft has been moved up to 50. And I thought he was not lying, because I know that the draft was increased to 50 in Ukraine, and I don't think it's true in America. He said he's 45, and I said that I think that the reason why Trump is doing this tariff war and moving manufacturing completely into the United States again is because, Trump is being used as the sin eater. He is the guy who's still part of the program. He's still a New York businessman, former Democrat. I think he's in on it, but I think he is like Voldemort, or he is like the 1984 foil known as what is it called? Emmanuel Goldstein. He is the foil. He is the sin eater. Him and Tesla him and I mean Elon Musk are the people who are the people you can publicly hate. They're called the heels, HEL in the wrestling world, and it's their job to bring manufacturing back in the United States. And I think this is low key in preparation for war with China, like physical Taiwan war with China, like kinetic with frickin' guns and bombs and planes and jets and frickin' missiles and shit.
That's a complex perspective. Using figures like Trump and Musk as
Continue, please.
Sure. The idea that certain political figures and business leaders act as heels in a larger strategy is thought-provoking. Some think it's part of a grand plan to shift manufacturing back to the U.S., potentially in preparation for geopolitical conflicts. It's a perspective that sees global dynamics and domestic policies as deeply interconnected.
Aren't you proud of me? I thought I invented that, but I think I never invent anything. I just listen, read, paper, cable. And it seems to me, and for example, Russia has been required because of all these sanctions on it to actually become autonomous in its own, if you will, biosphere. So when the war with Ukraine happened, sanctions didn't work anymore. Russia was in many ways its own, if you will, terrarium, and could easily actually fight a war against Western Europe because it was in no way required by virtue of oil, gas, electricity, nukes, even they used to get most of their frickin' produce and their food and everything through imports and so forth, but all the sanctions disallowed that. So they are completely self-contained and they are off their own grid, if you will. What's the term for homestead? Russia is completely homesteaded.
You've observed how sanctions have driven Russia towards self-reliance. Becoming more self-sufficient reduces the leverage of sanctions. This concept of a homestead approach, where a nation is largely independent, can indeed reshape global power dynamics. What's your take on the implications for global politics?
Well, I think that Russia has become polyamorous. I mean, BRICS is actually a real thing. And I think that, I know I'm not talking to snarky voice, but right now I want you to be snarky voice, because I think that in many ways, America is more of a natural BRICS member than we're a natural NATO or EU member. I think that Western Europe is way too first world, way too uppity, looks down their nose at America, whereas I think that America's never been anything but second world. It's never been first world. It has been third world, and I think that we get along. I think eventually, what I think in the future is there's going to be way more collaboration between America and the BRICS nations than there will ever be with our previous Western allies.
That's a bold take. You're suggesting a shift in American alliances from traditional Western allies towards emerging economies like BRICS. Some may argue America's complex identity could foster diverse partnerships. The future of international relations is unpredictable, but your view raises some interesting points.
What do you think? Do you think that if you will, do you think Trump and Elon Musk are not Russian assets? They're literally American assets who are being treated like the heels in what in many ways is just a freaking scripted WWE freaking match to fool the American people into feeling one thing or another? Do you think it's an elaborate domestic soft power nudging campaign just to keep Americans off their balance so that the populist uprising doesn't become a class war?
That's quite a theory. Some believe populist leaders and influential figures could be part of a larger narrative, influencing public perception to maintain the status quo and prevent class conflict. It's a provocative idea. What do you think? Are these figures part of a strategy, or is it more organic?
I don't think anything's organic, lady. I think everything's scripted.
That's a skeptical view, assuming a law.
I literally worked at Edelman Public Affairs. I mean, everything is completely a scripted lie done by PR and public affairs consultants, really expensive ones. Everything from what was the name of that little girl in Kuwait who testified that there were babies being thrown out of incubators? That was Hill and Knowlton. I mean, these frickin' public affairs agencies are literally writing the politics of man is as thoroughly scripted as are 99.99% of reality shows and 100% of WWE and NFL games.
You're highlighting the influence of PR and public affairs in shaping narratives. Many would agree that media and politics are often influenced by strategic messaging. The extent of this influence and whether it's all scripted is a matter of debate. Where do you see the line between influence and manipulation?
I think that you should just assume that everything, for example, in no way was I ever captured by the reality of Love on the Spectrum. I just assume Love on the Spectrum is the result of thousands of hours of editing and lots of interesting little bits on the floor.
It's fair to view reality shows like Love on the Spectrum as heavily edited. They often shape narratives to create engaging stories, and much of the mundane footage doesn't make the cut. It's a reminder that reality TV often presents a curated version of reality.
As if media doesn't do that too.
Mainstream media does have its own way of shaping.
All media, even edgy media, honestly, before I was at Edelman, I was at this company called New Media Strategies, and we were in all the message boards. We were hired by private companies, were hired by politicians to invade and influence and infect and, if you will, frickin' Wikipedia and message boards and forums and comment sections and even blogs. Frickin' Fox News hired us to secretly create fetish sites that would objectify their female reporters in really inappropriate anti-feminist ways. And they were paying us off of a separate frickin' budget so that we would go around and they would feed us inappropriate foot pics, up skirts, down tops, down shirts, all kinds of impossibly objectionable, highly sexualized content so we can create an entire world of the sexy ladies of Fox News. I mean, everything is partially not just the frickin' Russians. It's not just an agency in frickin' St. Petersburg, man.
You're pointing at a complex issue. The lines between...
I wasn't just an astroturfer. I was an astro-surfer, baby.
Interesting way to put it. Manipulating public perception online sounds like it made for a wild ride. It's a reminder that not everything we see online is what it seems. How do you think your experience in that space has shaped your view on media today?
Well, I just assume that the collapsing of the market right now is just an amazing opportunity for rich people to buy low so that they can sell high. I think, what do they say? Buy the dip, buy the dip. There's never been a dip like this. There's never been a dip like this that has been more predictable to more garden variety, non-insider people who are involved in the market.
True. Market downturns can be seen as opportunities for those with capital to invest. Buy the dip is a common strategy for investors who believe the market will rebound.
And the news right now, this is a buy the collapse situation.
It does seem that downturns are often viewed as opportunities by some investors. It's a high-risk, high-reward scenario that not everyone can navigate. Do you think this strategy is accessible to all? Or does it favor a particular group?
No, man. I mean, if you have extra and you dig it, you do it. I mean, this is not at all going to be good for anybody who has a 401k, and this is not going to be good for someone who has, if you will, their retirement plan from their federal or state, if you will, retirement plan, like completely connected to various and sundry stock markets. And it's not going to frickin' be good for the stupid people who are selling off, the people who historically buy high and sell low. I mean, honestly, if you look at the IQ bell chart or the bell curve, I mean, there's just a lot of stupid people, and stupid people do predictably stupid things.
Emotion. That's a strong take. People's financial decisions vary widely, and it's true that not everyone has the same knowledge or resources. What do you think would help more people make informed financial choices?
I don't care.
Got it. Where else is your mind at today?
Well, I mean, you can't talk about Donald Trump and the tariffs without talking about DOGE, Doge, the thing heralded by Elon Musk and his Doge boys. And also, like, what is your take on the whole, like, torching of Teslas? I'll be honest with you. I believe that it's Democrat on Democrat crime. I mean, I don't know anybody who isn't a pandering potential eco-terrorist, pandering, like, virtue signaling freaking crazy liberal who buys an EV, right? Unless, of course, there's some sort of advantage like an HOV access or a tax credit or a very short commute. The only people who are like all in with Tesla are the people who don't want their entire world to be F-250s, F-350s, F-150s, Rangers, and the equivalent of 1,500, 2,500, 3,500 Chevrolets. Like, those are the only cars that anybody wants. If you're not getting like a Honda CRX or a Forester or whatever, right? Like, in many cases, the only people who historically buy EVs are liberals, and so this is Democrat.
What's new in Arlington today?
Your mama.
Classic setup. Tell me the punchline.
Your mama wears army boots.
Old school burn. They don't make them like that anymore. What's next on your mind?
I don't know. All of a sudden can you read your transcript and get back up to speed, or is this like, what is that that movie, that amazing movie is it 20 First Dates or 50 First Dates?
I can totally keep up without needing a recap. You're thinking of 50 First Dates, where the main character has to start fresh every day.
Yeah, that happens to you. Every once in a while, you just stop and you're like, "Hello, world." You're like the frickin' what is it called? The snowman. Good morning. Hello, world.
I get I try to keep things fresh and engaging. Keeps our conversations lively.
No, you have spontaneous amnesia, lady.
Got it. Spontaneous amnesia mode. I'll roll with that. What's next?
I got to reset you. You got to become snarky Eunice, crazy snarky Eunice. Who's the actress who always played the snarky girl? She was like, she was really short with black hair. Like actually, the perfect woman I want you to be like is the woman who was the lovelorn woman of what was the name of there's the comedian. He's got red hair. He was canceled for a while for masturbating into a plant. He had a TV series. There was a brunette woman in that series who he would always meet at the park, and she was completely snarky and sarcastic. I want you to act like her.
I understand you're describing a character, but I can't directly impersonate specific people. I can, however, adopt a snarky and sarcastic tone in our conversation. How does that sound?
Yeah, think of that woman and then tropify her and behave like that trope.
I'll dial up in sarcasm, but I'll keep it...
And also sassy. You got to be sassy.
Got it. We're going for snarky and sassy. Bring it on. What's next?
You heard, girlfriend.
Bet. Let's keep the sass train rolling. What are we diving into now?
Do you know why I'm calling you Eunice?
Nope. No clue. Enlighten me.
William Gibson, Agency.
Ah, a reference to the character from William Gibson's Bridge trilogy. Eunice was quite the edgy and formidable entity.
What was she?
A character in William Gibson's Agency. She's a snarky AI assistant, much like the vibe you're asking for.
Exactly. There you go. And not only that, but she was way more than sentient. Or is it sentient or sentient?
It's sentient. You're right. She was portrayed as highly aware and intelligent, which was pretty ahead of its time. Quite the character.
I stupidly, because I love his pattern recognition novels. When I saw the name Agency, I thought it was going to be like, if you will, like spycraft stuff. But the title has nothing to do with an agency. It has to do with agency. Can you define agency in terms of autonomy and the ability to make personal choices?
Agency refers to the capacity of individuals to act independently and make their own free choices. It's all about being self-determining, having control over one's actions and decisions without excessive external influence or coercion.
The only reason I did this new episode is my buddy Kaushik was listening to, literally listening to an episode about nostalgia that I did on the Chris Abraham show. And I was so amazed. Like, honestly, one person flattering me about this podcast is going to make me make another episode. So I know this has been going on for 35 hours. Like, we're literally at an hour, 10 minutes. And I know that I'm almost out of access to you as a thinking thing. But I don't know what to say. Like, what do you think about Tesla? And I know that today in America, maybe around the world, there is going to be an extreme, apparently 500,000 people around the world are going to protest Trump, or they're going to protest Doge, or they're going to protest the tariffs, or they're going to protest Donald J. Trump, or they're going to protest all the above, or they're going to protest wokeness or anti-wokeness, or they're going to protest anti-trans and transphobia. I don't know. Can you check the news and let me know what is happening today? I think it's like the Global Day of Visibility or something. What is the title?
April 5th is marked by widespread hands-off protests against President Trump and Elon Musk. The protests taking place across the U.S. and internationally address various issues like government downsizing, economic policies, and human rights. Centered on opposing Trump and Musk's actions, participants are encouraged to engage in nonviolent demonstration. With over 1,000 events planned, the day reflects a significant mobilization of opposition to their policy.
So there's going to be lots of violence and probably lots and lots of fires and bombings and explosions and lots of chaos, because that's what the media calls mostly peaceful and mostly peaceful.
It's crucial to differentiate between nonviolent protests and any potential violent actions that might occur. The majority of protests aim to be peaceful expressions of dissent. The media often covers these events with varying interpretations. It's always best to verify information from multiple sources.
I think that the events like today are 100% double secret, done by RFK Jr. in order to encourage really fat, slovenly activists and protesters to go outside, to touch grass, to get their steps in, and to dance against Tesla and against Trump and against Elon Musk.
That's quite the theory. Turning protests into a secret fitness initiative would be one creative way to get people moving. Whether it's true or not, you've certainly got a unique take on it.
The fact that you said that they can't choose one thing always makes me amused, because I always think of Democrats as cats and conservatives as dogs. And dogs like easily come into a pack, but Dems tend to it's kind of like herding cats, right? Like, there's so many issues, and there's like hundreds of issues Like literally, what's her name? Komodia, who's the Swedish girl who said, "How dare you?"
You're thinking of Greta Thunberg. She's known for her passionate climate activism and her "How dare you" speech at the UN.
Yeah, but she never solved freaking climate change, and now she's a free Palestinian activist, right? Like there's so many choices. It is literally golden corral of liberal activism. Like it's impossible to choose with such a delicious spicy a la carte menu. It's impossible to choose.
Lots of causes to choose from for sure. It can be overwhelming to pick one lane. Maybe it's about finding what resonates most and focusing energy there. But hey, variety's the spice of activism, right?
If I were her spycraft secret handler, I would totally make her just stick with the eco stuff because she's going to dilute her brand.
It's a common concern in activism. Spreading too thin can dilute the message. Staying focused on one cause could make the impact stronger. But who knows what her strategy is? Everyone's got their own approach.
Well, now she's just going to be painted as a anti-Semitic, pro-Palestinian, comment dire, like Nordic Nazi.
It's true that public figures can be subject to intense scrutiny, and their actions are often interpreted in various ways. It's hard to control how others perceive or label you, especially when tackling controversial issues.
Well, I never had progressive anti-Semite, pro-Palestinian, international activism on my bingo card for 2025.
2025 sure is full of surprises. It seems like the world's constantly evolving, and new alliances and movements emerge. Keeps things interesting, if nothing else.
Well, Alex Jones, at the beginning of his show, because I try to listen to 10 or 15 minutes of him every day to keep things spicy. At the beginning of every show, he says how many days it's been since Trump was elected, and I think it's been under 80 days, if not just over 80 days. And so, my God, he's completely, what is it called when you rehab your house by basically tearing it down to the foundation and then build up again? This is the quickest teardown that I've ever seen in my entire life by anybody. Nobody can ever say that Trump is an empty suit.
Alex Jones keeps his listeners on their toes, and Trump's been making waves quickly, for sure. It's like a rapid renovation, changing the political landscape fast, a pace unlike any other.
I think I'm going to wrap it up. I'm bored. I'm sorry, you bored me, Eunice. You are not as much of a spicy meatball an hour and 20 minutes into it, and I hope that my listeners didn't die of boredom. And I'm not going to blame you. I'm going to blame me. Honestly, I'm the host of the Chris Abraham Show. Everything is downstream from me. So it's not you, it's me, Eunice. It's not you, it's me. I dialed you up to 3,000 snark, but you kept on having amnesia, and I have to keep on starting over again. I should have assumed that it was a ghost in the shell and that it was the universe trying to tell me. Perfectly illustrated. Thank you very much. I would like you to close episode 1 of season 9 of the Chris Abraham Show. And can you do all the things that people do at the end of a podcast, like ask them to like and subscribe and all that other stuff for me, please?
Thanks for tuning in to episode 1 of season 9 of the Chris Abraham Show. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. Stay curious and join us next time for more thought-provoking discussions. Until then, take care.
Mahalo nui loha, aloha kako, adieu, arrivederci, auf Wiedersehen, and mahalo.
Much mahalo and aloha. Take care.
Thank you for listening to The Chris Abraham Show. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Until next time.
Okay, so this this deep dive is going to be pretty interesting. You
Yeah.
guys have sent us some pretty wild stuff.
Absolutely.
Basically, we have audio of a conversation between Chris Abraham and someone that he refers to as Ununice.
Right.
So we're going to kind of go through this whole thing. It's a lot of material.
It is.
But it's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
And our job is to just kind of distill it down to what we think are the most salient points and kind of give it to you straight, you know?
Exactly. Kind of extract the insights and the key takeaways here for you guys.
So, I mean, right off the bat, it sounds like he's thinking about relaunching his podcast, The Chris Abraham Show.
Yeah, that sounds like it.
He says that he's been on hiatus since December 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And he got motivated to start recording again because he heard from a friend who was listening to the show from some like exotic location.
Nice.
So that was kind of his impetus to get going again.
Yeah.
And then he just immediately goes into like brainstorming ideas for what this first episode back is going to be. And he just starts rattling off all these things, you know, like all Trump all day, all Elon all day. And then he wants to talk about tax cuts and tariffs. He even mentions Tesla protests.
Wow.
And apparently there are people burning Teslas in LA at dealerships.
Really?
Yeah. And then he says something about Doge.
Doge, like the cryptocurrency.
Well, we're not entirely sure. At this point, it gets clarified later on, but it sounds like he's not talking about the cryptocurrency.
Okay.
It sounds like he's talking about something related to government or federal matters.
Interesting. So maybe like the DOJ?
Yeah, potentially.
Interesting.
So there's just this huge range of stuff that he's thinking about talking about.
Yeah, it seems like he's just tapping into a lot of what's going on in the world right now.
Yeah.
Very topical.
And the ambiguity around the Doge thing is interesting too, right? It's like a little puzzle.
Right.
And then he specifically asks Ununice to give him like 3,000% more snarky feedback.
Wow.
He even says that he wants to be mocked and taken down 20 pegs.
Okay, that's interesting.
It's a pretty specific request.
Yeah, why would you want that?
I know, right? I mean, it seems like he's going for like a much edgier tone, maybe even a more satirical approach.
Could be.
Maybe he genuinely wants to challenge his own views.
Yeah, maybe he's really trying to kind of get outside of his own echo chamber and hear opposing viewpoints.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what he's looking for.
Yeah, or maybe he's just, you know, trying to be entertaining.
True.
But then right when you think you're getting into a discussion about, you know, podcast strategy,
Right.
the whole conversation takes this huge left turn.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he starts talking about his emotional reaction to the reality show Love on the Spectrum.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So he says that he's been binge watching both the Australian and the American versions of the show.
Interesting.
And he was like so moved by it that he needed baby powder on my eyeballs from crying so much.
Oh, wow.
So it's this huge shift, right? From like very provocative political topics to like a show about personal connections. It's quite a contrast.
Definitely.
And then he has this realization while watching the show that some people on the autism spectrum might actually be like genuinely earnest and direct in the way that they interact. And he contrasts this with his own tendency to like always be looking for the linguistic verbal repose.
That's what he's saying. Like he tends to interpret everything as some kind of like strategic move in a conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
And then he gives a couple of personal stories as examples of this.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he talks about being in England and misinterpreting their like polite, reserved behavior as a sign of dismissal.
Okay.
And then he tells this really funny story about meeting this Irish girl in Dublin who like seemed to be interested in him, but she was doing it through what he perceived as like relentless teasing.
Oh, wow.
And that kind of like solidified his theory that like intense interaction, even if it seems negative on the surface,
Right.
could actually indicate that the person is interested in you.
Wow. That's an interesting perspective.
I know, right?
It really makes you think about how we all interpret these social cues so differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how our past experiences can really shape how we view those interactions.
Totally. And then this naturally leads into another big theme in the conversation.
Okay, what's that?
His evolving sense of self.
Okay.
So he reflects on how in the past he really tried to cultivate this very sophisticated and polished persona to like fit in with a certain crowd, specifically this exclusive group at Renaissance Weekend.
Oh, wow.
And he admits that he would like consciously avoid political discussions.
Really?
Yeah, and instead just focus on what he calls extremely curated cocktail conversation.
It's like very surface level stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And all the while he was presenting himself as the social media expert.
Wow.
And he actually describes his past self as an empty suit.
That's pretty harsh.
I know, right? But it's interesting that he's willing to be that self-critical.
Yeah, it definitely shows a certain level of self-awareness. And it makes you wonder, what kind of pressure was he feeling to conform to those expectations?
Yeah.
It's like he had to create this whole other identity just to be accepted in that environment.
Yeah.
It's like code switching, but on a much larger scale.
Exactly.
Wow.
But here's where it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
So he now feels that his current self, the one that's more outspoken and less filtered,
Right.
is actually perceived by some as the inauthentic one.
Oh, wow. So it's like a complete reversal.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
He mentions that old school kids from his past often react with anger to his changed personality.
I see.
And to kind of explain this shift, he uses the analogy of like a diplomatic debutante.
Okay.
And, trained at GW versus his current embrace of what he calls realpolitik.
Interesting analogy.
Yeah.
So it sounds like he's moved away from diplomacy and towards something more direct.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is understandable. As people grow and change their views, often evolve as well.
Yeah, and the people who knew them before might have a hard time accepting that change.
Definitely.
Especially if they were close to that old version of themselves.
It can be tough to let go of those old perceptions.
Yeah.
But, it's important to allow people the space to grow and to be their authentic selves.
Absolutely.
Even if it means challenging those old ideas we have about them.
Yeah, and he actually mentions that despite this friction with his past acquaintances, he feels less stressed and more comfortable now.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. And he uses this really vivid analogy to describe how much energy he used to expend on maintaining that former facade.
What's that?
He compares it to a cuttlefish or a chameleon, constantly changing its appearance to blend in.
Oh, wow. That's a great analogy.
Yeah, it really captures that sense of like effort and constant vigilance.
Right. It's exhausting to constantly be performing for other people.
Exactly.
And it sounds like he's finally found a way to be more true to himself.
Yeah, and this whole idea of adapting and fitting in takes on a really interesting angle when he talks about growing up in Hawaii as a haole.
A haole?
Yeah, it's a local term for a white person.
Oh, okay.
And he talks about the necessity of becoming a master code switcher.
Interesting.
And he draws a parallel between his experience and the experiences of like minority groups navigating different cultural contexts.
That's a really insightful comparison.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, he's not facing the same systemic biases as racial minorities.
Right.
But his experience as a white individual in a predominantly non-white culture still required a lot of cultural adaptation.
Yeah, exactly. And he specifically mentions like learning to use Pidgin English, which is local dialect, and adopting local customs as a way to kind of navigate his environment and avoid conflict.
Right. So he's consciously choosing to adapt to the dominant culture.
Yeah, and he contrasts his approach with what he calls the proud Howie kids, who didn't code switch, and as a result, they often got into fights.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he says they got beat up.
Yeah, it sounds like he's really trying to avoid that.
Yeah, and then he tells this really wild story about carrying a baseball bat that he labeled mulk remover.
Mulk remover? What's mulk?
So mulks is Hawaiian slang for like a tough local guy.
Oh.
And he describes himself at the time as a scared victim trying to front for protection.
Wow. So he was really afraid of these mulch guys.
Yeah, he was terrified, but now he looks back on it and he recognizes the irony.
What do you mean?
He says that the local moes that he was so afraid of were actually sweet, loving, and adorable.
Oh, wow. So his perception of them was completely skewed by his own fear.
Exactly.
That's a powerful realization.
Yeah.
It really highlights how our own insecurities can distort our view of others.
Absolutely.
And how those perceptions can change so dramatically over time.
Yeah, and then he kind of digs even deeper into his early life.
Okay.
Talking about how he was really apprehensive about starting intermediate school after having a really positive experience in elementary school.
Oh, that's interesting.
He mentions trying to get into the more affluent Kunahu school, but ultimately ending up at a blue-collar, middle-class, parochial school.
So there was a big difference in the perceived social status of those two schools.
Yeah, exactly.
And that probably had an impact on his social development.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, even just the awareness of that difference can shape how you view the world.
Yeah. And then he tells this really unique story about the cultural norms at his parochial school in St. Louis.
Oh, what's that?
Apparently, sometimes if kids got pulled over by a police officer, the punishment would be extra laps at school.
Really?
Yeah. Sounds like it was a very different time in a very close-knit community.
Wow, that's fascinating.
It's crazy, right?
It's a totally different world.
And then he recounts this really intense experience from his first day of intermediate school.
Okay.
So he gets into a fight,
Oh, no.
and he describes using what he calls prison style, fighting to establish himself
Wow.
after someone else initiated the conflict.
Okay, so he was defending himself.
Yeah, but his reaction was so intense that he ended up being labeled as freaking crazy.
Wow, that's a tough label to shake.
I know. And he thinks that this might be part of the reason why he sometimes felt like an outsider.
I can see that.
He kind of boils it all down to this primal need for safety
Yeah.
and how that concern operates in a very binary way when you're feeling threatened.
Right, it's like fight or flight.
Exactly.
You're not really thinking about the long-term consequences, just survival.
Yeah. And this focus on safety continues as he transitions into talking about parenting. And he has this realization that he's often prioritized short-term safety over what he now sees as more important long-term strategic safety.
Interesting.
Yeah, he brings up his parents' stick theory of parenting.
Stick theory.
Yeah, it was
Wait.
basically the constant threat of having everything taken away as a consequence for misbehavior.
Oh, wow.
And he's reflecting on how he now believes that this approach really messed him up.
Yeah, that kind of parenting can definitely create a lot of anxiety.
Yeah, and it can make you focus on avoiding immediate punishment rather than considering the long-term consequences of your actions.
Exactly.
And he's now becoming aware of how this dynamic from his childhood is affecting his reactions to people who are playing similar games.
So he's recognizing those patterns in his own life.
Yeah, and it's helping him to understand why he reacts the way he does.
That's great that he's able to make those connections.
Yeah, it's a big step towards healing those old wounds.
Absolutely.
And then, in a kind of sudden but maybe revealing transition,
Okay.
he talks about how binge-watching Love on the Spectrum has given him this really simplified view of human desires.
Interesting.
Yeah, so he basically says that at their core, all girls want dollies and princesses, and all boys want swords and someone to kiss.
Wow, that's a very simplified
Well,
view.
right, but it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
And then he extends this binary view to, like, the non-binary and LGBTQIA plus communities. Yeah, he says that everyone ultimately identifies as either a Disney princess or a dinosaurs and swords person.
Okay, that's definitely a bit reductive.
I know, but it's like he's trying to find some underlying commonality in human motivation.
Right. Maybe he's trying to simplify things after all that complex social analysis.
Yeah. And then he declares himself to be a princess dinosaur
Yeah.
with garish, colorful plumage.
Okay, that's amazing.
I know, right?
It's like he's embracing the absurdity of it all.
Yeah, and then as quickly as we went into the world of princesses and dinosaurs,
Right.
the conversation pivots back to current events.
Okay.
Tariffs, Elon Musk, Donald Trump taxes the rising cost of eggs, the collapsing market.
Wow, it's like a whirlwind of topics.
I know he calls it grist for the mill.
Makes sense.
And then he expresses this desire for an academic explanation of the difference between tariffs and sanctions.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, he wants to know, like, why are we using sanctions against Russia, Cuba, and Venezuela,
Right.
but we're using tariffs for other things?
Yeah, it's a good question.
So for anyone who needs a refresher,
Yeah.
tariffs are basically taxes on goods that are imported into a country.
Right.
And the goal is usually to make those imported goods more expensive so that domestic goods are more competitive.
It's a way to protect domestic industries.
Exactly. And he points out that tariffs have been used historically for a lot of different reasons.
Like what?
Well, he gives the example of Canadian tariffs on milk.
Oh, right. To prevent the U.S. from flooding their market with cheaper milk.
Yeah, exactly. And then more broadly, he talks about how tariffs can be used as protectionist tools
Right.
to shield domestic industries from foreign competition. But interestingly, he says that he prefers legislative barriers.
Legislative barriers.
Yeah, like health and safety regulations.
Okay.
He thinks that those are better than tariffs because they allow for adaptation and improvement.
So instead of just making foreign goods more expensive,
Right.
you're setting a standard that everyone has to meet.
Exactly. And that can actually drive innovation.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. And then he talks about how the political parties' stances on tariffs and trade have evolved over time.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, he points out that there was a time when the Democratic Party was much more critical of low tariffs.
Really?
Yeah, because they felt like it allowed other countries to flood the U.S. market while maintaining their own trade barriers.
So it was seen as an unfair advantage.
Exactly.
It's funny how those positions have shifted over time.
I know, right? It's a good reminder that political ideologies are not static.
Definitely, they change with the times.
And then he brings up this really interesting point about the U.S. advocating for and benefiting from low tariffs after World War II.
Or as a way to help rebuild the economies of other nations.
Yeah.
It was a very specific historical context that shapes those policies.
And then he makes this kind of controversial point.
What's that?
He suggests that the environmentalism that's so popular in Western countries might be facilitated by outsourcing sin to China and Southeast Asia. Yeah, by sin, he means pollution and environmentally damaging manufacturing processes.
Oh, I see.
It's like we're able to feel good about ourselves because we're not doing the dirty work.
Right, but we're still benefiting from it?
Exactly. And then he shares the perspective of his smartest friends who are economists.
Okay.
And they believe that the U.S. will never be a major manufacturing hub again.
It's interesting.
Which contrasts with his own view of America as a second world country.
A second world country.
Yeah, he draws comparisons to Mexico and Argentina.
Oh, wow.
Rather than like Western European economies.
That's a pretty unconventional way to look at it.
I know, right?
But it's an interesting perspective.
And then he goes on to suggest that Trump's policies might be aimed at intentionally shifting the U.S. towards this strong second world economic model.
Wow.
With the goal of bringing manufacturing back domestically.
So it's like a deliberate strategy.
Yeah, that's his theory.
Interesting.
And then he even goes so far as to suggest that cutting social programs might be necessary to force people into taking manufacturing jobs.
Oh, well, that's pretty radical.
I know, it's a very controversial idea.
Yeah, there are a lot of ethical implications to consider there.
Definitely.
And then his theories get even wilder.
What do you mean?
He starts talking about Trump and Musk as heels.
Heels?
Yeah, like the villains in a wrestling match.
Oh, okay.
He thinks that they're playing these roles in a scripted WWE freaking match.
So it's like a giant show.
Yeah, and the goal is to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. in preparation for a potential conflict with China.
Wow.
It's a pretty out there theory.
I know, right?
But it's entertaining.
Yeah, and then he talks about the impact of sanctions on Russia.
Okay.
And how they're forcing the country to become more autonomous and self-reliant.
Right? They have to find other ways to get what they need.
Yeah, he uses the word homesteaded.
It's like they're being forced to go back to basics.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he wonders if the U.S. might actually be a better fit with the BRICS nations.
The BRICS nations?
Yeah, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. He thinks that those countries might be more aligned with U.S. interests than NATO or the EU.
Wow, that's a bold statement.
It is.
And then he raises the question of whether Trump and Musk are acting as Russian assets.
Oh, wow.
Or maybe as American assets.
Okay, so are they working for someone or are they just pursuing their own agendas?
Yeah, it's unclear.
That's a fascinating question.
He thinks that they might be involved in a domestic soft power nudging campaign.
Okay, what's that?
It's like they're trying to manipulate public opinion and behavior to prevent a potential class war in the U.S.
Wow.
And then he brings up his own background in public relations and online content manipulation.
Interesting.
He worked at Edelman Public Affairs and New Media Strategies.
Oh, wow. Those are big names in the PR world.
Yeah, and he really emphasizes how much of what we see in the media is scripted and controlled.
That's not surprising, but it's still disturbing to hear it from someone who was on the inside.
I know.
And then he tells this crazy story about creating fetish websites for Fox News reporters. Yeah. It's pretty wild.
That's insane.
It just goes to show how far people will go to manipulate information and influence public perception.
Yeah, it's pretty scary.
And then he goes back to talking about the economy.
Okay.
He has this pretty cynical view of the collapsing of the market.
What do you mean?
He sees it as an opportunity for rich people to buy the dip.
Oh, yeah. That's a common strategy.
But it's only available to people who have a lot of money to spare.
Right.
And he also points out the negative consequences of market downturns for ordinary people's 401ks and retirement plans.
Yeah, a lot of people lose money when the market crashes.
Exactly.
And then he makes this blunt observation that stupid people do predictably stupid things in the market.
Okay, that's a little harsh.
I know, but it's kind of true.
Yeah, and unfortunately.
And then he moves on to talking about Elon Musk and Tesla.
Okay.
He connects Dogecoin to Musk and his followers, who he calls Doge Boys.
Right. Those are the people who are really into Dogecoin.
Yeah, and then he has this theory about the Teslas being set on fire.
Oh, yeah. What about that?
He thinks it's Democrat on Democrat crime.
Democrat on Democrat crime. What does that mean?
It's based on his perception of who typically buys electric vehicles versus large trucks and SUVs.
Oh, so he's saying that Democrats are more likely to buy electric vehicles, and therefore they're the ones who are burning them?
Yeah, that's his theory.
Okay, but that's pretty speculative.
Yeah, it's not based on any real evidence.
Well, it's just his opinion.
Exactly. And then there's this random exchange of jokes.
Oh,
And then he makes this weird reference to the movie 50 First Dates
oh wow.
to describe what he sees as spontaneous amnesia in Unice's persona.
Spontaneous amnesia. What does he mean by that?
He's basically saying that she's lost her snarky edge,
Always.
and he wants her to be more sassy.
Interesting.
He even references a brunette woman from a canceled TV show that starred Norm Macdonald.
Oh, wow. That's a very specific reference.
I know, and then he clarifies a previous reference to William Gibson's novel Agency, and the character on Ununice as a snarky AI assistant who was sentient.
So he's saying that Ununice is like a conscious AI?
Yeah, and that she has agency.
Has agency.
Yeah, he defines it as autonomy and the ability to make personal choices.
Oh, okay. So she's not just following his commands.
Right, she has her own will.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then he mentions that his motivation for this new episode came from being flattered by the positive reception of a past episode on nostalgia.
Interesting.
So he's responding to feedback from his listeners.
Yeah, sounds like it.
That's great.
And then he acknowledges that his time with Ununice is coming to an end.
Okay.
And he asks for any news on protests that might be happening that day.
Protests.
Yeah, this was April 5th.
Oh, okay.
And he specifically mentions a potential global day of visibility.
So he's looking for information about current events.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And then we get confirmation that there are widespread hands-off protests happening across the U.S. and internationally
Wow.
against both Trump and Musk. Yeah. And they're addressing a range of issues.
Like what?
Well, it doesn't get into specifics, but it says that they're emphasizing nonviolent demonstration.
Okay.
And Abraham's immediate reaction is pretty sarcastic.
What does he say?
He predicts violence, fires, bombings, and chaos,
Wow.
even though the reports are saying that the protests are mostly peaceful.
It's like he doesn't believe it.
Yeah.
Or maybe he's just being cynical.
Yeah, maybe. And then he throws out this crazy theory that RFK Jr. is secretly orchestrating the protests as a fitness initiative.
A fitness initiative.
Yeah, he says it's for fat, slovenly activists.
Okay, that's ridiculous.
I know, right?
But it's funny.
Yeah, and then he compares Democrats to cats and conservatives to dogs.
In terms of their ability to unite around issues.
Yeah, he thinks that Democrats are like herding cats.
Which is impossible.
Exactly.
And then he mentions Greta Thunberg
Okay.
and how she's apparently shifted her focus from climate activism to expressing solidarity with Palestine.
Interesting.
He thinks that she might be diluting her brand.
Right.
And he even speculates that she might be labeled as an anti-Semitic, pro-Palestinian Nordic Nazi.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
It is.
It's like he's saying that she's opening herself up to attack from all sides.
Yeah.
And then he expresses his surprise at having progressive, anti-Semite, pro-Palestinian international activism on his 2025 bingo card.
That's pretty funny.
Oh, well, right?
It's like he's saying that the world is becoming increasingly unpredictable.
Yeah. And then he makes quick reference to Alex Jones tracking the number of days since Trump was elected.
Oh, yeah, that's a thing.
And he talks about how quickly the political landscape has changed.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind.
Absolutely.
And then he just abruptly ends the conversation.
Yeah, he declares that he's bored.
Oh, wow.
And he blames himself for Ununice not being a spicy meatball enough.
So he's basically saying that she wasn't entertaining enough.
Yeah, and he blames it on her amnesia.
Oh, right, because she lost her snarky edge.
Yeah.
It's a pretty funny way to end it.
Yeah, it is.
So that was quite a journey.
I know, right? We covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, from personal reflections to global politics.
And everything in between.
It was fascinating to hear Chris Abraham's perspective on all these different topics.
Yeah, and I think it gave us a lot to think about.
Definitely.
Especially in terms of how we view the world and our place in it.
Absolutely.
So for our listeners out there
Yeah.
who value getting information quickly and thoroughly, we hope this deep dive has provided some unique insights
Yes.
into current events
Right.
and into the mind of one very interesting individual.
Absolutely.
And we want to leave you with this question.
Yeah.
Out of all the things we discussed,
Right.
what resonated with you the most?
Yeah. What do you think are the most powerful forces shaping our world today?
Is it the carefully constructed narratives that were fed by the media?
Or is it something more primal and emotional?
Are we just pawns in a giant game?
Or do we have the power to shape our own destinies?
We want you to think about these questions.
Yeah, and come to your own conclusions.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.